Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my book garden. Sorry, I'm a little late today. There were some speaker issues. Anyway, welcome also to part 5 of book 1 of Copper Coins, which means we will actually be finishing book 1 this week. And then I'm actually going to be taking a week off, and then we'll start book 2 after that. I'm planning to get the schedule up probably tonight. But I just wanted to give everyone a heads up about that right now. Hello, Chichi Kiki, and hello, Cookielicious. And hello, Annika. Welcome. But anyway, welcome everybody. Oh, hello, little potato. Or little potato. Welcome. This is your first live stream with us. So, hello. But yes, this is a chill stream. It means that I will be talking with my lovely book garden. I will be talking to the book. I will be occasionally looking things up, maybe to either clarify a definition of something or even just see what something looks like. We have sometimes references to objects that we don't usually use or know. Hello, Truffle. How are you doing today? Well, thank you, Cookielicious. But yes, this is also a mature stream. There will potentially be triggering things in it, which it will be marked if so, after it's recorded. But if you are here during the live, you're here during the live while it's happening. I will do my best to kind of forewarn if I see something starting, but I can't always predict. So if you think we're starting to get close to something that might be triggering, it's more than okay to log off, come back, and just like take care of your mental health. If you're watching later, the way to tell if there's potentially something triggering is there will be a mention in the title, there will be a slight description in or summary more so in the description, and there will be a timestamp on the video. But yes, thank you, Truffle. It's very cozy. It was very hot today, so we are definitely reaching summer outfits right now. But yes. I am not sponsored. I do this because I can, and don't own anything other than the physical copy over there and my time, and sometimes not even that. Yes, as I recall, most of the arc has questionable arrays, and there's some mention of neglect. Yeah. Now, I imagine, like many of you right now, it is ridiculously hot outside. We also have a lot of humidity here, where I live, so that's extra fun. One last thing though. I am not fluent, but I will do my best, but this does mean that I will most likely stumble or occasionally pronounce the names, the places, sometimes just words in general. Like English can be hard too. But just be kind. I'm doing my best. It's also slightly tilted. I had to move my computer because I was trying to solve the audio issues on my own, but I think that's good. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a blast. I agree, Annika. But that's it. I do have something to show today. It was payday, so I ordered some other stuff, but that'll probably take a bit to come. But I ordered this a while ago from Etsy. But yeah, storms on the horizon for you. Oh, it's too hot to go to the beach where I'm at right now. We have heat warnings. But yes, this is from Lychee Tree Pins. Don't know if you could see that. They did not have a card. They have an Etsy. Lychee Tree Pins. But they have the most adorable Modao Zushi pins. I'm gonna take them out of their little baggies, but they're really great for the small spacings, like in Ita bags or on pin boards. Because they're small. So, like, I know definitely, like, look at how cute those are. They're absolutely tiny. But I love, 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 love them. So they're on Etsy. That's where I found them. Totally going to be going in one of my Ita bags. Or even just on my purse. Because they are so cute. Yeah, the little paper effigies. Talismans. But yeah. That will definitely be used. And then I did end up finding some new Modao Zushi stuff because they have released some new dolls, new mini dolls stuff. So might be coming sometime soon. But yes, very cute. You know, I'm a sucker for MXTX stuff, and they just released so much of it. So there's that. But yes. Okay. We only have 2 chapters today. They do have walking mushroom pins as well, but like I couldn't resist those. So, let's go through our recap. Ugh. Quick sip first. Okay, so last time we were going towards the island, the Mantu Island. And we got onto the island, and it's very creepy, very horror film-esque, with fog, with unlike typical footprints that sank into the ground, the row of ash outlined footprints were only shallow imprints on the surface. So those tracks don't look like they were made by someone walking, said Jiang Xining. They seem more like they were left by someone hanging as they brushed against the ground. I thought it was Mantu. A burial mound or Mantu Island, I thought. So why they're here is they're looking for Lu Nianqi's brother, who is blind but also is mystically able to see. So he sees beyond vision, physical vision. Yeah. Fentu or Mantu Island. Yes. So that is where we are. They are following these footprints that are magical footprints from the paper talisman that Xuanmin burned and lit. So, as they're doing this, the marble that is Shushian's dragon body is warming up, and he is trying to alert Xuanmin. So of course he's sticking his paper body, out of the pouch, and of course irony kicks in. Or rather karma. So Xuanmin warns him, hey, your flimsy body is going to rip apart if it sticks out for too long. And it does, of course. But then they find something hidden under the tree they're walking toward. They're very, very creepy tree they're walking toward. And they find a string from Lu Nianqi, like the money pouch. So they would tie strings of coin onto their belts or into a pouch, and that's where they would keep their money. So they found that. Not quite a ball, no. So then, of course, they realized that's really weird. The money was stolen. Why is it here? Um, and of course, then they fall through a trap door. A mechanical whirling rang in his ears, and the ground beneath everyone's feet suddenly gave way. This unexpected plummet was accompanied by the sound of stone grinding against stone, leaving everyone dazed and disoriented. During their rapid descent, Shu Xian felt a tiny wisp of respect toward Xuan Min rise within him for the first time. Somehow, that damned bald donkey managed to maintain his balance in midair and even struck a perfect landing, avoiding a messy tumble on the ground. Shu Xian wasn't so lucky. The moment Xuan Min landed, the momentum dragged Shu Xian's neck, still caught on the pouch opening, sharply downward. Shit, shit, shit! Damn him and his big mouth! It's really going to tear! Oh, we already counted that donkey count, but I will do the counts before we start. Xuan Min straightened up in the dark. He had the vague impression that something had just fluttered to the ground. Ow. Oh, my arm is going to rip. What accursed place is this? I'm dizzy from the fall. Master? Master Xuan Min, are you there? Having heard Jiang Xining and Lu Nianqi's tangled wails of pain, Xuan Min grunted in acknowledgement and lit a talisman. By the flickering light of the paper flame, he looked down and met the gaze of a paper head that had fallen to the ground. It was only the head and nothing more. I don't know about poor Shu Xian. He kind of walked right into it or fell right into that one. Okay. So real quick, our counts. Our donkey count is sitting at a crisp 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Our Jiang Xining suffering is sitting at a very unfortunate 13. Our wanted poster count is sitting at 3, and our face count is sitting at 4. And once again, Truffle, you're on deck for that one. Okay. So we will start at 12:30. Okay. All right. Chapter 12. Island Tomb. Master, what's wrong? asked Jiang Xining. Being a ghost, he possessed a natural advantage over Lu Nianqi. Other than some dizziness and a headache, he hadn't suffered any real injuries from the fall and thus recovered first. When he straightened from his ugly sprawl on the ground, he saw Xuan Min holding a flame and staring at the ground. He was motionless and looked like he'd been stunned. I mean, you just fell through a hole. I'd be pretty stunned too. During their limited time together, Xuan Min had always remained calm and unruffled, as if neither fear nor anger could touch him. It was the first time Jiang Xining had seen him stupefied, something that could leave even Xuan Min speechless. What kind of horrific situation could that be? Jiang Xining's heart thumped hard and apprehension welled up inside him. How does a ghost get a headache? Are we talking like as a joking thing, or is this a serious question? At Xuanmin's lack of reaction, Jiang Xining's anxiety only grew. He shot to his feet to take a closer look, but he only managed one step before tripping. Look where you're going! Lu Niangqi cried out in pain as he jerked his foot back. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. As Jiang Xining apologized repeatedly, he turned to see Lu Nianqi huddled with his hands over his head, messy and unkempt, his movements stilted. I stepped on your foot, so why are you holding your head? Jiang Xining asked. Lu Nianqi kept quiet for a while before saying in a muffled voice, I didn't brace myself properly and landed face first. My forehead's all scraped. Jiang Xining sighed. His doctor's instinct, momentarily interrupted by the fall, reared its head once more. Can you stand? Did you hurt anything else? I hit my injured hand. It's probably bleeding again. Lu Niangqi shook his hand, but he accepted Jiang Xining's support to stand up. Yeah, Jiang Xining is definitely our cutie ghost. Very much Wen Ning vibes. I'm fine otherwise. Did that monk did he find anything? Why isn't he speaking? As he'd lost his parents and older relatives at such a young age, Lu Niangqi's manners were lacking. If not for Xuanmin's small display of ability earlier, he probably wouldn't have rescinded his words and just addressed him as monk. The two injured boys hobbled over to Xuanmin. Xuanmin's unapproachable nature made them afraid to get close, so they stayed half a step away, their necks craned forward like meerkats as they stared at the ground. Xuanmin's talisman must have been enchanted because, despite having burned for quite some time, the paper had not yet been consumed. A small flicker of flame remained at his fingertips. Although dim, it was enough to illuminate the face that he was staring at. Jiang Xining and Lu Niangqi were both shocked into silence. A dying flame, a situation with no way out, and now their companion's severed head was lying in front of them. They might just snap from terror. Moreover, Shushian's head was face up, the paint still reminiscent of a wide-eyed corpse bleeding from every orifice. It should have added to the sheer horror, however, a thought immediately tumbled into Jiang Xining's mind. What is this wise one doing now? But then his brain buzzed back to life and reality sank in. His limbs turned cold, and he understood why Xuanmin had stood there stupefied for such a long time. His head's gone. Is he really dead? Jiang Xining asked hesitantly. This was a truly unprecedented situation. Shushian had been chattering nonstop just a moment ago. Who could have imagined that he'd end up decapitating himself? Where's the body? Jiang Xining continued, stammering. Lu Niangqi hadn't recovered yet. He swiveled his wide-eyed stare toward Xuanmin. Xuanmin didn't speak, nor did his expression flicker. He simply reached into his pouch and pulled out the doll's headless paper body. The once lively doll was motionless in his palm, much like an ordinary sheet of flimsy paper, silent and lifeless. Jiang Xining opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. Lu Nianqi ended up speaking first. Is he human or a ghost? Can he still survive like this? He should, Jiang Xining muttered automatically, but he found himself unable to finish. After hesitating for a moment, he picked up the flimsy paper head from the ground and tentatively called out, Xiong? Are you awake? If you are, please respond. Silence. He held his breath for a moment, but still heard no reply. His hand holding Shushian's head trembled, and he quickly placed the head in Xuanmin's palm. Can we glue him back together? Lu Niangqi asked stiffly. Oh, and the Xiang after Shushiang is a word meaning elder brother. It can be attached as a suffix to address an unrelated male peer. Like that will work? Have you ever seen anyone reattach their head with glue? Why don't you try it and show me? Jiang Xining was about to blurt out all of this, but he recalled Lu Niangqi's age and swallowed his words, turning his troubled, distressed gaze back to Shushian's decapitated body and head. Only for Xuanmin, who'd been staring at his palm, to finally speak. He's beyond saving. Let's burn him. What? Jiang Xining and Lu Niangqi exclaimed together. Xuanmin's expression didn't so much as flicker, remaining cold and stern. Seeing that, Jiang Xining became convinced that he was serious. and his legs buckled slightly. Master, you can't mean that. I don't perform rites for paper dolls, said Xuanmin, and his other hand brought the still burning talisman closer to Shushian's paper body. Just as the flame was about to brush the paper, a faint voice chimed next to Xuanmin's ear. Stop right there, you dare! The voice didn't come from the paper doll. Rather, it emanated from the empty void next to Xuanmin's ear. The fretting Jiang Xining jerked his head up. Staring at Xuanmin, Jiang Xining circled him several times, too afraid to speak a word. Because he couldn't see Shushian anywhere. In truth, at the moment the paper body tore in two, Shushian's soul had fought his way out of the doll, unwilling to go through that kind of pain again. His soul had no form. Like wind or air, it was wholly invisible, which suited him just fine. Of all the things he could have done, he'd ripped off his own head. The humiliation was too great. He didn't want to see anyone just then, so he'd gathered himself behind Xuanmin and turned into a trailing shadow. And Shushian is the offended cat. Yes. Shushian thought that if he floated over and whispered ominously in Xuanmin's ear, he could startle the monk and rattle his composure. Against expectations, Xuanmin didn't even turn his head. His tone was unsurprised as he asked, Not playing dead anymore? Shushian couldn't believe it. As the saying went, everything had its match. Ever since he'd met Xuanmin, Shushian felt like he was perpetually on the verge of hacking up all the hypothetical blood in his hypothetical body. That is a fantastic phrase right there. Like, I know the whole hacking up blood because you get so frustrated, but hacking up all the hypothetical blood in his hypothetical body is unironically hilarious. How did you know I was playing dead? Displeased that he'd failed, Shushian forced the words out through gritted teeth. Xuanmin didn't bat an eyelid as he flipped his palm over and put away the doll that he'd been ready to burn. Scourges last for 1,000 years, while the good die young. Shushian longed to send Xuanmin on a nice trip to the underworld. However, remembering his situation, Shushian tamped down his temper and softened his attitude. Fine. Someone like me shouldn't lower myself to your level. Say whatever you like. At these words, Xuanmin cocked his head a little and glanced at the emptiness by his ear. It seemed he found Shushian's new docility rather strange. Shushian cleared his throat. His next words would be rather embarrassing, so he paused to muster his courage. He glanced at Jiang Xining and Lu Niangqi, who had turned to look in the direction he was speaking from, and decided to lower his voice even further. Spirits had no physical form, much like the wind, so Shushian's shape and size didn't matter. Shrinking himself down, he drifted around Xuanmin's ear and spoke in a barely audible whisper. "Bald donkey, I have a proposal." And 26. Xuanmin didn't speak, but he also didn't move, clearly waiting for what he had to say next. "I want to borrow your body for a bit," Shushian said. Xuanmin remained utterly silent. Shushian thought about it and decided his statement came off wrong, so he quickly rephrased it. "I don't mean I want to take over your body. I mean I need a place to stay, preferably right up against your hip." Xuanmin still said nothing. Why is talking this hard? Shushian thought. The reason for his struggle was because spirits couldn't float around aimlessly for too long. He needed to find a physical object to anchor himself to, or he would dissipate. So he'd turn into mist and poof. The longer his soul drifted like this, the more it would damage his vitality. He'd worked hard to nurse his body back to health and had no wish to return to being a quadriplegic, but now that the paper doll had ripped into two, he couldn't possess it. As for why he wanted to stay close to Xuanmin's hip, ever since the marble had ended up in Xuanmin's pouch, Xuxian had grown increasingly aware of Xuanmin's unique constitution. The dragon couldn't help but think about the bell tolls he'd heard coming from Xuanmin's hip and how they'd left him dizzy and disoriented. Without a doubt, those sounds were connected to the golden marble's transformation. He even begun to entertain some flights of fancy. If both he and the marble stayed close to Xuanmin's hip, might he be able to return to his dragon form? Although his dragon form had been stripped to its bones and tendons, with proper nurturing, it might be possible to grow new ones. He wanted to return to his original form as soon as he could, to regrow his bones again. Once that was the case, he would no longer need to haggle and compromise with others the way that he was doing now. Forget it. I just need to find something to stay in. Doesn't have to be your hip. Your pouch will do. Xuanmin hadn't even said a word, yet Xuxian was making concessions without any prompting. Xuanmin glanced at the emptiness. After all your wailing earlier, you're now asking to go into the pouch? Xuxian gritted his teeth and grunted reluctantly. Yeah, just say yes or no. Why? Your bones are special. Xuanmin shook his head, apparently unable to find a response. After some thought, he reached into the pouch and took out Xuxian's golden marble. He twirled his index finger, and a cut opened itself in his skin, from which a bright red drop of blood oozed. Using the drop of blood as ink, he raised his hand and sketched out a spell on the marble. Xuxian recognized the spell's design. He'd drawn the same on the paper doll back when he'd first anchored himself to it. As Xuanmin finished the final stroke, the marble glowed faintly before dimming once more. Xuanmin reached out to grab at the air where Xuxian was drifting and tapped the golden marble. Just like that, Xuxian was pulled inside. He hadn't truly returned to his body, he'd only been anchored to the marble the way that he would be to any other ordinary object. It was a temporary dwelling. Even so, he was elated. He had to admit that when Xuanmin wasn't trying to drive him crazy, he was quite tolerable. This single action was the one that mattered to Xuxian the most, blotting out all else. Going to crawl around still? Xuanmin asked, while putting the golden marble back into his pouch. My venerable self is round and smooth as glass, with nary a limb in sight. How the hell am I supposed to crawl? Xuxian thought. However, he'd just accepted a favor from Xuanmin, so having a go at him right away wouldn't be a good look. Instead, he gave a proper answer. No more crawling. What about blowing everything up with your antics? An angry retort bubbled in Xuxian's throat, but he ultimately forced it back down. I won't cause more trouble. Seeing that he'd truly become compliant this time, Xuanmin pushed the marble into the bottom of the pouch. With this, Xuxian really settled down somewhat. After all, he'd promised Xuanmin to behave. He couldn't just go back on his word right away. He had to at least pretend to comply. Plus, Xuanmin really had chosen the best object to subdue him. In the form of a round marble, he couldn't jump even if he wanted to. The most he could do was roll around in the pouch with Xuanmin's movements. Xuanmin's never going to let him live the lightning down. Probably not, no. Jiang Xining hadn't heard Shuxian bargain, but he'd observed Xuanmin's actions and understood the general situation. He pointed at the pouch. Is he injured? Jiang Xining relaxed when Xuanmin shook his head. Now that he'd dealt with Shuxian's unfortunate marble form, Xuanmin finally had time to observe their surroundings. Using a pinch of fire held between his fingers, he partially illuminated the area, revealing an underground stone chamber of unknown origins with a gently sloping floor. Xuanmin turned the paper flame to light up the lower area of the chamber. Two massive shadows were sitting there. Jiang Xining and Lu Niangqi both shuddered in terror. What are those? Jiang Xining gasped, retreating 2 steps. Tomb guardians, said Xuanmin. The sloping ground was about 30 yards in length. At the end was a half-open stone door with a massive beast carved from stone standing on either side. Each was over 10 feet tall with fierce eyes and stout faces that exuded intimidation. Their glares were directed downward, silently scrutinizing the intruders from above. Fearsome stone beasts of such scale were usually only seen in royal mausoleums. Tomb guardians? Jiang Xining had no reason to doubt Xuanmin. A chill ran down his spine, and he rubbed his arms. Could this Fentu Island really be a giant graveyard, as its name suggests? Lu Niangqi turned pale. But I've never heard anyone say that. It's only called Fentu Island because it resembles a burial mound. If it really were one, the pharmacist wouldn't dare come here. I mean, to be fair, decay, growth, I've heard that dead things make great fertilizer. It's common. If they're finding all these rare plants or medicinal herbs, and it's because they're on a dead island, I mean, it's not the craziest thing I've heard, nor the craziest plot that's happened in one of these stories, let's be real. Xuanmin raised the flame to highlight the faces and feet of the tomb guardians. They're new. How new? Asked Jiang Xining. Erected within the last 3 to 5 years. If they'd been carved 3 to 5 years ago, the construction of the tomb must have also happened then. But that was bizarre. Whom had it been built for? Also, I doubt pharmacists are very afraid of the dead. Oh, hello, Ember's Place. Yeah, no, welcome. I'm glad you like my reading voice. And have sweet dreams. But yes. Whom had it been built for? Xuanmin swept the light over the area they'd fallen into, then shone it into the fathomless tunnel ahead. He shook his head. There was no chance of leaving the way they had come. Their only choice was to continue forward in search of another exit. After another sweep of light, Xuanmin began to walk. Jiang Xining and Lu Niangqi were both shivering with fear, but they dared not stray too far from Xuanmin. After hesitating for a moment, they hurriedly caught up, closely following him from behind. Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. I'm a ghost too, Jiang Xining mumbled to himself. He felt a little bit better. Xuanmin passed between the 2 gigantic tomb guardians and pushed open the half-closed stone door. Even the oldest, most neglected wooden door would only creak softly when opened, but a stone door was different. As it was pushed open, the hefty stone base ground against the stone floor, causing it to rumble. That sound echoed in the vast and silent tomb, bouncing back and forth until Lu Niangqi and Jiang Xining's hackles were bristling in fear. Lu Niangqi clamped his legs together, feeling like he might wet himself. However, his mulish personality wouldn't let him show weakness. He squared his shoulders and took two brave steps forward. In an eerie place like this one, he couldn't know if it was safer to walk in the front or stay in the back. Right as Xuan Min was about to push the stone door all the way open, it knocked into something with a muffled thud. It seemed to be stuck. There's something behind the door, Liu Niangqi cried in surprise. Despite his best attempts to quash it, there was a tremor in his voice. Xuan Min did not hurry to investigate what was behind the door. Instead, he used the fire to scan the general area ahead. Liu Niangqi couldn't help screaming at what he saw. What the hell? The flames revealed another connecting hall, similar to the chamber they'd been in, just a little narrower. What had frightened Lu Niangqi were the walls on either side of the hall covered in paintings of beasts, even more terrifying than the Tomb Guardians. The murals were painted in neither black nor full color, but in crimson. Were, were they painted with blood? Lu Niangqi shrieked. Ultimately, he was the youngest and most prone to panic. The murals were enormous. Just how much blood could they have taken to create? The timid young Xining also shuddered, but he quickly came to his senses. No, I don't think so. Take a sniff. If they had been painted with blood, the entire chamber would stink. That's true. It doesn't smell like blood. Lu Niangqi calmed down as he inhaled. After that, other details became apparent. For example, the way the mural's ink shone a bright red. Blood dried on the walls would have turned brown by now. I mean, it's a little startling to think that Lu Niangqi knew that, but he lives in a pretty rough part of town. I guess it makes sense. Xuanmin regarded the two walls. Cinnabar. Painting a tomb with blood and animal parts could be easily explained, but the choice of cinnabar was a strange one because the pigment was known for its protective qualities against evil spirits. By painting the murals with cinnabar, the builder had an aim to bring peace to the intended or assist them in passing on. Instead, they had trapped them in eternal unrest, never to reincarnate. It was an act of terrible malice. Jiang Xining had never set foot in a mausoleum like this, nor was he familiar with local customs. However, he was knowledgeable about cinnabar. Back in the clinic, he'd grown up surrounded by medicine and medicinal practices. Even with going out of his way to study medicinal ingredients, he'd committed many of the effects to memory. And he enjoyed browsing through related texts during his spare time, which naturally touched on cinnabar. The manhwa follows the novel word for word, at least they got the manhwa in English translation till the end of volume 1. I was thinking about adding that. Funny thing, the Danmeis always gloss over the fact that cinnabar is crazy poisonous. It really is. Terribly, horribly poisonous. It's kind of like the whole lead poisoning, and there was also a point of time where there was a green dye that was horribly toxic. It was this beautiful emerald color, but it was actually making people so sick. But it was wildly popular. I can't remember what period of time. But yeah, and history. Yeah. Cinnabar does contain mercury. But yes. Even without going out of his way to study medicinal ingredients, he committed many of the effects to memory. And he enjoyed browsing through related texts during his spare time, which naturally touched on cinnabar. Yeah. It was the Victorian era. If I remember next time, and have time to look it up, I will talk more about the green pigment later. Using cinnabar to paint beasts, Jiang Xining muttered. How much did they hate the intended to do this to them? But Xuanmin only waved a hand. Perhaps the evil spirits inside were up to no good. For whoever was buried here refused to rest, then the builder might have had no choice but to use cinnabar to secure some peace. Rash remarks were always unwise, so Jiang Xining and Lu Niangqi ceased speculating. They noticed that Xuanmin had shifted his attention from the murals to behind the stone door, and they rushed to follow him. The moment he saw what was there, Lu Niangqi's face paled. There was indeed something behind the stone door, preventing it from fully opening. But it wasn't an object. It was people. Two people. One old, the other young. The elderly man lay curled on the ground, one hand clutching his shoulder. His clothes were muddy and torn in several places, while dark bruises molted the back of his hand. He might have hit it while falling. Meanwhile, the young man was slumped against the wall, his eyes squeezed shut and his lips pallid. He looked frail, perhaps even more so than Jiang Xining, dreadfully thin, cheekbones gaunt and jutted. In one hand, he clutched a bundle of tangled twigs fastened together using red string. Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Apparently, the manhwa follows volume 2 certain point. The whole manhwa is finished but not translated and only available on Bilibili. Interesting. If Shushan had peered out of the pouch, he would have recognized the twigs fastened with string, as well as the slumped youth. It was none other than Lu Shiju, the person they were searching for. Shiju? Lu Niangqi was momentarily stunned, then threw himself in front of his brother. Not knowing if he should touch Lu Shiju, Lu Niangqi hesitated. He examined his brother closely. When he determined that there were no serious injuries visible, he could hold back no longer and began to shake Lu Shiju's shoulder. Shiju! Lu Shiju! Wake up! Lu Niangqi shouted. When Lu Shiju still remained unresponsive, he switched to shoving the old man on the ground. Old man Liu! Old man Liu, wake up! Jiang Xining stepped forward. Let me take a look. Oh, they still have their Chinese app. Everything is in Mandarin and chapters are locked. Don't know how to access them. Man! Well, at least we have a picture in consolation. Yo. Kind of digging the creepy, like, totally poisonous wall art. Like, that's pretty sick. That would be an amazing tattoo. Like a back tattoo. That'd be so cool. Like along the spine. Yeah. Our ghost boy's so sad. And I love how this is like all they do of old man Liu is like his shoulder. Like that's it. Poor Jiang Xining looks so spooked. Yeah. Uh-huh. Thoughts for the future. I know it's not about him. I know it's not about him, but like they didn't even show him. However, as he bent down to check, the wan Lu Shiju was roused by all the shaking and struggled to open his eyes. Curled on the ground beside him, old man Liu also showed signs of waking. Perhaps he dreamed of falling, for his feet jerked and his eyes snapped wide open. He stared blankly for a moment through cloudy eyes before slowly pushing himself up. Jiang Xining bent to lend him a hand, helping him to sit upright. Lu Shiju and Old Man Liu stared at each other for a while, then looked at the newcomers, their eyes bewildered. Perhaps they'd been in a daze for too long, and their minds had yet to catch up. I was thinking about the picture where someone's drowning in the background, and they're like, "This ain't about him." Yeah. Yeah. Um, Jiang Xining and Xuanmin studied Lu Shiju's actions. It was indeed uncanny. Watching his movements, they'd never have guessed that he was blind. Lu Niangqi suddenly slapped Lu Shiju's shoulder. Have you gone stupid? Can't you see my chi? You can't even recognize me now? His forceful slap seemed to jolt Lu Shiju back to his senses. Yan Chi? He muttered hoarsely. Still haven't figured out who is the pretty man in white hair on the special edition folding screen. I guess we'll find out eventually. Lu Shiju stared at his brother for a long time, his eyes unmoving. No matter how one looked at his eyes, they appeared untouched by illness. When fixed on Lu Niangqi, the depths of his irises seemed to shine. There was no difference between his gaze and that of a person who could see. Maybe his eyes were just a little darker, but that was all. However, Jiang Xining began to notice that Lu Shiju did exhibit some habits common among the blind. He was slow to recognize his brother. His pupils flickered as he looked Lu Niangqi up and down, over and over. Then he reached out and pressed his fingertips to his brother's forehead and felt around. Lu Niangqi sucked in a breath and gritted his teeth. Don't touch me there. I hit my forehead. You won't be able to find the mole. At those words, Xuanmin studied Lu Niangqi's face. Like he had said, the smattering of moles between his brows had been rubbed raw and scabbed over, changing the texture of the area significantly. Remember that. So Lu Shiju grabbed Lu Niangqi's hand and brought it toward his face, ready to read his palm. Lu Niangqi tugged his hand back and frowned. Don't touch my hand either. I cut it open on the boat here. Just when it was a bit better, I reopened the wound when I fell. Keep pressing on it like that, and I'll be injured forever. Lu Shiju silently withdrew his hand and nodded, as if he'd confirmed that the youth before him really was his brother. Lu Nianqi, he said, sounding out each syllable. There was no question in his tone this time. Back in the courtyard, Lu Niangqi had shed tears in his panic. However, now that he had finally found Lu Shiju, he reverted to his peevish attitude, acting like he hadn't come to find Lu Shiju of his own volition. The sight left Jiang Xining speechless. You can tell Jiang Xining doesn't he does have siblings, but he's got a sister. You can tell he doesn't have a brother. He soon discovered that Lu Shiju was no better. Once Lu Niangqi helped him to his feet, the first thing he did was shove Lu Niangqi's hand off his arm as though disdaining his assistance. My kid's spirit animal is a hedgehog. There was no warmth in his actions. In fact, they were entirely callous. What was wrong with them? Jiang Xining stared at the two brothers in frustration. He understood what Xuxian had meant when he'd said that they weren't close. Still, Jiang Xining wasn't oblivious. He could recognize sincerity when he saw it. The anxiety Lu Niangqi had shown back at their residence, the fleeting look of relief that had flashed over Lu Shiju's face when he recognized his brother, Neither of those were faked. So why, after Liu Shiju got up, did they have to put on this show of uncaring coldness? Pride? Face? Take your pick. Once he was on his feet, Liu Shiju asked Old Man Liu how he was doing, then busied himself with his bundle of twigs, ignoring everyone else. Xuan Min scrutinized him, then Old Man Liu, and his brow furrowed a little. Master, weren't you and Xiang looking for this young man, Shiju? Jiang Xining felt compelled to remind Xuanmin. He'd seen Xuanmin's furrowed brow, even if he didn't know what it meant. Xuanmin nodded, then pulled the golden marble from his pouch. 1 second. Xuxian's head was spinning from all his rolling around in the pouch. When he'd been a paper doll, he could sense the subtle changes in the marble due to Xuanmin's influence. Now that he was inside the marble, he realized that the changes were actually anything but subtle. At first, he felt as if he'd been submerged in a hot spring, the waters beneath him bubbling with steam, leaving him warm and comfortable. However, over time, the temperature seemed to rise higher and higher to the point of scalding him. This isn't a hot spring, Shushian realized with a jolt. I'm being boiled to a damn dragon meat stew. Alas, it was too late for regrets. There was no escape. The soup seemed almost viscous. As he continued to soak, his imagined limbs went limp, and he could barely lift them anymore. With all this going on, he had barely paid attention to what was happening outside the pouch. Naturally, he was ignorant about what Xuanmin and the others were doing or whom they'd encountered, which left him little room to butt in. Just as he was about to dissolve into broth, Xuanmin's hand dove in to save him. Xuanmin was rather unusual. While his fingers felt no warmer than an ordinary person's, perhaps even slightly cooler, the region around his hip, underneath the pouch, had somehow managed to roast the golden marble to toasty perfection. Gripped in Xuanmin's hand, Shushian breathed a sigh of release. No more heat at last. His spirit cooled down as well, and the fog in his mind cleared. They rolled in Xuanmin's palm for a while to speed up the cooling process, then came to a stop and looked around him. His gaze filtered through the marble's golden surface. I don't know why I struggled with that word. Lu Shichu, Shushian said doubtfully. You found him so easily. Xuanmin said. With his mind still the consistency of molten soup, Shushian's reactions were sluggish. It took a moment before he replied. Oh, that's wonderful. Perfect. You're even carrying your sticks, so you can find someone for me. He slowly rolled himself over, then spoke to Xuanmin. Pay him, bald donkey. 27? Xuanmin didn't reply to that audacious comment, but eventually he pulled out several silver pieces. I'll pay you back in gold later, Shushian promised. Liu Shiju darted his eyes from Xuanmin and Shushian to his brother, then nodded. Take the offer, don't fleece him. He looked 17 or 18, not yet mature, but he had his share of eccentricities. There we go. Quirks. He's got quirks. Since he needed to support his family, charging for his divination services was a must, but he didn't set a fixed price. His customers could pay in gold, silver, or copper, whatever they chose. Choosing copper meant the price was 3 copper coins. If using silver, it was 3 silver pieces. If you stupidly wished to offer gold, the price was still 3 pieces. Shushian belonged in the stupid category. Every time he patronized the boy's services, he offered him 3 golden beads. Lu Niangqi took the 3 silver pieces without fuss and tried to slip them into Lu Shiju's pocket. Lu Shiju stopped him, saying, "My robe's ripped. You keep it for now. Don't be greedy." "Who's greedy?" Lu Niangqi said with a scowl. "I mean, it works." Very mystical. Ooh. Lu Shiju ignored him to look toward Xuanmin. "What should I be divining?" Xuanmin handed him the golden marble. "This marble," Shushan said, "it has passed through several hands. I wish to know where those people are." Lu Shiju didn't take the marble. Instead, he crouched down with his bundled twigs clutched in one hand. Staring at the marble intently, he slowly moved the twigs over the ground. After watching this for a while, Jiang Xining noticed Lu Shiju wasn't drawing on the ground with the twigs. The twigs were moving by themselves. Lu Shiju's fingers only lightly encircled them. Jiang Xining watched the sticks while crisscrossing lines and scattered circles emerged on the ground. At last, the twigs fell to the ground with a thump. Lu Shiju frowned before picking them up. He traced the marks on the ground with his fingers, his eyes half closed, and his lips moving soundlessly, as if he were calculating something. When he was done, he raised his eyes to the marble in Xuanmin's hand. "Strange. I pinpointed the whereabouts of 4 people, but I couldn't find the last one at all. It's like they don't exist." "That means there were 5 in total?" Shushan said to himself. "Well, good enough. Tell me about the 4 you found." Lu Shiju nodded. "One is a fisherman. The second I couldn't find. The third was a sorcerer, and the fourth was a man from the county office who you should have met before, named Liu. The fifth is this master here." "Oh, great. Just great. I knew about those 4, even without the divination," Shushan thought. Aloud, he asked, "Where are they now?" Lu Shiju traced the marks on the ground as he slowly replied. "The fisherman is currently in Anping Prefecture, just 1 river away. The sorcerer is cultivating in a small cave on Mount Panlong in the Shu region. As for the county scribe named Liu..." He ran his fingers over the ground and his brows knitted, then relaxed. "Scribe Liu was caught in a fire last night. He won't survive past today. As for the master, I don't think I need to tell you." His explanation done, Lu Shiju withdrew his hand and looked at Shushan. Jiang Xining was shocked. "Scribe Liu won't survive past today?" He'd heard old lady Liu talk about how debts must be repaid, but he hadn't expected it to really happen, let alone so quickly. Oh, hello, Karma. Lu Shiju traced the ground again at his words. Right. He won't live past today. He is currently bedridden in one of the side wings of his home. The Jiang family had perished in a fire, their bodies reduced to ash. They must have endured the agonizing torment of burning alive. Liu Chong had languished every day in the side building, suffocated by a heavy shroud of yin energy. To siphon off many years' worth of fortune, his father had nearly cost Liu Chong his life in the process. Scribe Liu's time had run out. He would perish from his burns, his eyes falling shut within the side building where he lay. Truly, all debts must be repaid. "Anything else you wish to know?" Lu Shiju asked Shushan. Shushan shook his head, causing the marble to roll a little. "I know everything I needed to know." Lu Shiju then looked at the others. "What about you?" Hearing this, Xuanmin picked Shushan up and placed him back into the pouch. As the marble slipped from Xuanmin's cool fingers, Shushian thought, if only I had arms to reach out with, I could hold on for just a little longer. Unfortunately, the marble was smooth and round and rolled right to the bottom of the pouch, and thus the dragon meat stew started boiling away again. Having dealt with the golden marble, Xuanmin pulled out a folded sheet of paper from his lapels. It was the same brushstroke-packed sheet he'd unfolded in Guyun Hall. There were characters and even rough sketches. Some had been jotted down hastily, while others were written in neat rows. He handed it to Lu Shiju without unfolding it, but the corner of the folded sheet was exposed, revealing the characters written there. Find them. I wish to know who gave me this piece of paper, please, Xuanmin said in a low voice. Lu Niangqi took another 3 silver pieces from him in accordance with his rules. Lu Shiju looked at the paper while touching the twigs to the ground, letting them write. Though Shushian was tucked back in the pouch, he was curious about Xuanmin. As his mind had yet to broil away, he perked up his ears, listening to the voices outside. After a moment, just as Shushian's mind was starting to melt away, he heard Lu Shiju's voice drift in. You did. Shushian didn't know what to say. He had the fortune teller divine the paper he'd left for himself. There was definitely something wrong with him. Wait! That reminded Shushian of what Jiang Xining had mentioned earlier. The scent that clung to Xuanmin was reminiscent of medicine used to treat dissociation. Could this bald donkey really be an amnesiac? If so, he's too fucking good at acting normal. 28? Just like Shushian, both Jiang Xining and Lu Niangqi could not help staring at Xuanmin. But Jiang Xining felt that he was being rude, so he hurriedly turned away, trying to wipe all thoughts from his mind. Xuanmin didn't return their stares, seemingly oblivious to them. His expression was as composed as ever, and he asked Lu Shiju, are you sure no one else has touched it? Lu Shiju ran his hands over the ground again to check, then nodded. No one else. Thank you very much. Xuanmin returned the gesture. Now that the divination was over, Lu Niangqi spoke up. You've been away from home for half a month, all because you fell into this accursed place, huh? But Lu Shiju didn't seem to hear. He pointed to the door behind himself. We can't leave the way we came. We'll have to go through here. Lu Niangqi glared at him, frustrated, then walked off to the side. Lu Shiju disregarded his brother and pressed forward, down the hallway toward the door that led deeper into the tomb. Old Man Liu followed after him, and the two walked a few steps before looking back at Xuanmin and the others. We've explored a lot of the route here and almost got to the end last time, Lu Shiju explained. This time, we should be able to leave. After saying so, he cocked his head, signaling for them to follow. Xuanmin observed them for a moment before starting after them. As he walked, he nodded at Jiang Xining and Lu Niangqi. Stay behind me. The two of them obeyed, trailing behind him like a little tail, nervous, yet also reluctant to get too close, lest they step on his snow-white monk's robe. Lu Niangqi's face was full of indignation still, so Jiang Xining tried to console him. Your brother must be exhausted. He's probably trying to find a way out. He's probably tried to find a way out many times. Look at his robe. It's wet and starting to dry. It must have been soaked and still heavy. He's conserving the strength he needs to walk. That's why he's speaking as little as possible. Looking down at the wet marks on the ground, Lu Niangqi snorted in response, but forced down his frustrated expression. Lu Shiju stopped in front of another stone door and placed his hand upon it. He stared at it, then blinked once. It might be a little dangerous. Remember to follow me. At the same time, Lu Shiju blinked. Lu Niangqi couldn't help doing the same. Shaking his head, he rubbed hard at his eyes as if to wipe something away. Xuanmin caught this out of the corner of his eye. What's wrong? My vision got blurry all of a sudden, said Lu Niangqi. He blinked hard and mumbled, It's better now. It doesn't matter. We need to get out of here first. Xuanmin observed the scabs on Lu Niangqi's forehead and then looked at Lu Shiju. Jiang Xining followed Xuanmin's gaze and glanced back and forth between the two. The scholar suddenly felt like something was wrong. Just when he was about to pinpoint the reason, Lu Shiju shoved open the stone door. The hollow rumble of the doors, grinding open, echoed throughout the hall, and the talisman paper in Xuanmin's hand flared before blinking out without warning. With the surroundings plunged into darkness, everyone halted. Jiang Xining and Lu Niangqi gasped, and their breath caught in their throats where it stayed. They were too afraid to exhale. A cold wind surged through the open stone door, carrying with it a strange, indescribable stench that was damp and full of decay, chilling enough for goosebumps to erupt over their skin. Even Shushan, still boiling away, felt it somewhat. For him, the chilly wind was a welcome relief for his overheated mind. However, it was only a temporary one, a superficial stopgap that didn't address the underlying symptoms. As soon as the wind passed, he began bubbling over once more. Such intense heat would render an ordinary person's mind incapable of functioning, and Shushan was no exception. Rocking back and forth within the pouch, he simmered in the dreamlike state as he wondered how to free himself, even if only to catch a breath. That moment, he had little care for his own dignity, and he groused to himself that Xuanmin hadn't reached in and let Shushan cool himself against his fingers. With his mind this useless, Shushan's mouth moved as he complained internally, leading him to mutter all of his subconscious thoughts, though they came out slurred thanks to his daze. Rather like the repetitive mumblings of a senile old woman, he echoed the same phrases without variation. That's not going to sound creepy at all while you're in this already creepy situation. Once the cold wind passed and the flame went out, Jiang Xining and the others held their breath. The room was deathly silent, and they stood as straight and rigid as wooden planks. That was when Shushan's incessant mumblings drifted through the air, accompanied by the chilling wind. The effect was quite potent. What's that sound? Lu Niangqi asked. Where is it coming from? Master, can you light another flame? Came Jiang Xining's anxious voice. The sudden darkness had enshrouded everyone's figures. It was as if all their companions had been swallowed, leaving each one of them alone. It was said that when silence reached an extreme at night, one's senses would grow disoriented. Faraway noises would seem to be in your ear, making it difficult to discern distance and direction. Yeah, I've experienced that. It's quite creepy. Xuanmin frowned as he listened, only to realize that Shushan was mumbling a single phrase over and over like a hornet's incessant buzz. Bald donkey. 29. What's this about? Xuanmin wondered. At a loss, he chose to ignore Shushan and pulled out a new sheet of talisman paper, lighting it once more. But the moment the flame flickered to life, another gust blew past and the light vanished. Don't waste your time. It won't stay on. Liu Shiju's voice was dull as he gathered his strength to shove hard against the stone door. How did he see it? That is my question. He is blind. I guess he sensed the chi. In contrast to the all-consuming darkness swallowing them, the chamber behind the door glowed with a faint ethereal light. This light was soft and feeble, like a fine dusting of frost sprinkled over charcoal wood, barely illuminating the silhouettes of those present. Liu Shiju, at the head of the party, said no more. He simply walked inside. Xuanmin patted the tireless murmurer at his waist, then told Jiang Xining and Lu Niangqi without looking back, "Stay close." He, too, stepped through the tomb door. Jiang Xining and Lu Niangqi, afraid of being left behind, dashed after them. As Lu Niangqi walked, he felt something beneath his foot like a small pebble. He stumbled slightly while a large roar echoed from the stone door grinding shut behind them. The rumbling shook him right to the core, and he almost turned tail and ran right then and there. Despite some dim lighting, the chamber remained dark and dismal. The size of the place was impossible to gauge, nor could they discern what lay at their feet, the surroundings enveloping them, or whether anything loomed overhead. Wait, are those holes up there? Jiang Xining interjected, pointing up. The stone chamber was soundless, and his words echoed multiple times, causing him to freeze in place. His hand remained pointed at the ceiling as he quailed, too terrified to move. "Keep your voice down," Liu Shiju said quietly. With his whispering, the echoes faded, and the chambers felt less empty and eerie. Xuanmin looked up to see 7 tiny holes drilled into the ceiling. He reached out into the void above them. "They're not holes," he said. "If they had been, the wind wouldn't have blown in that direction. Night pearls," he declared. He studied the luminescent pearls for a while, then added, "Exactly 7 of them. Their positions match the Ursa Major constellation." At these words, understanding dawned on Jiang Xining and the others as well. They could now see that the pearls formed the shape of the Big Dipper. Their cool light, shining down on them, was far paler than the warm glow of the sun. It's still so dark, even with 7 night pearls hanging there. Just how high is the ceiling here? Jiang Xining muttered. "You can tell by listening to the echoes," Lu Shiju said from in front of him. "The path ahead is difficult to traverse, so be careful. Be careful not to step on the wrong stones and make sure not to fall." Lu Niangqi, who had his foot in the air, immediately jerked it backward. "Wait, what do you mean by the wrong stones? And don't fall?" "Especially you," added Liu Shiju. "You must not look down." Lu Niangqi was stunned by this rather unreasonable request. He could barely see the outlines of their fingers here. How were they supposed to walk without looking at their feet? How was he supposed to take any steps? However, while they talked, they slowly began to adapt to the darkness, and the outlines of their surroundings gradually became visible. They were standing on a stone platform that resembled a cliff, wide enough to fit 2 rows of people, but narrow enough that if Lu Shiju and Xuanmin took another step forward, they would be sent plummeting off the edge. "I'm a ghost. I can't die a second time," Jiang Xining whispered to himself over and over. With that, he mustered enough courage to take a half step forward. He stayed a shoulder width behind Xuanmin, squinting ahead to make out what he could. For them, the stone platform led to a massive hollow in the ground. Shimmering ripples of light glinted off its surface. There must be water. However, they could see neither how deep the water was nor where it came from. If they fell in, they might very well never resurface. Strangest were the round objects that resembled heavy melons bobbing in the water, each one well separated from the others. Jiang Xining could only discern their general shape, but he couldn't tell if they were stones or something else. What do we think it is? I have a thought, but I'm curious what everyone else thinks is bobbing in the water. A sweep of his gaze told him there were at least 100 of them, and they seemed to be placed in an array. Within the dark water, in front of Lu Shiju's feet, were stone platforms, tall and thin, each only allowing space for a single foot. They stood scattered, like the uneven pillars from a lion's dance, stretching out before them. Something else. It ain't melons. Yeah. I think it's skulls. Like, it's an ominous cave. There's already cinnabar on the walls. Like, they have a creepy cave. Like, I would not be surprised if there's just, like, heads bobbing in the water. I'm surprised if it is heads bobbing in the water that they can't smell it, but supposedly it's this gigantic cave, so I guess we'll find out. But I mean, that would be a good reason for his brother to be like, don't look in the water. Hello, Esper Lady! We are still on the same chapter. We are in the Mantu cave. We have fallen through a trapdoor. We have found the brother. They have made predictions. We kind of have a point of where we're going next to look. And now we are in a very creepy cave, which has a lake that we are not supposed to look at, and stones that we have to be very careful stepping over, and it's pitch black. It's very ominous, and there's things floating in the water, and I think they are skulls. But I do not know for sure. So. But yes. Within the dark waters in front of Lu Shiju's feet were stone platforms, tall and thin, each only allowing the space for a single foot. They stood scattered like the uneven pillars for a lion's dance, stretching out before them. Yes, very creepy. Very spooky. Woo! Yeah, how you doing, Esper? This was the only path that they could take. Jiang Xining glanced around him, but couldn't see any hint of the other side. Just how long is this path? He felt his legs weaken, and he instinctively turned to look at Xuan Min. Ooh! Are you talking TCG or are you talking mobile? VGC. Okay. Very nice. Go fight win. Yeah. I have a friend who plays that. Yeah, this author is great at doing that. Well, good luck. This was the only path they could take. Jiang Xining glanced around but couldn't see any hint of the other side. Just how long is this path? Felt his legs weaken, and he instinctively turned to look at Xuan Min. Xuan Min was surveying the surroundings, his brow furrowed. It was unclear what he was thinking. In the darkness, Jiang Xining couldn't see much of his expression beyond the slight knit of his brow. Ooh! Very cool truffle. Nice. I love the evolutions. So that's usually my team, is like all the evolutions. And a couple Uh, of course, it has Umbreon, my favorite, but yeah. In the darkness, Jiang Xining couldn't see much of his expression beyond the slight knit of his brow. Yeah. Liu Shiju spoke up again. I don't need my eyes. I can see the chi here, which is much more reliable than sight. Stay close. We must move quickly. With that, he stepped onto the first stone platform. Old Man Liu followed closely behind. Years of rowing had left him with a slight hunch, and his stooped silhouette radiated an aura of wizened old age. He was utterly composed and hadn't said a word. In fact, he wasn't even short of breath. Seeing this, Jiang Xining felt like maybe he too had nothing to fear. Xuanmin waited for a moment. Once Lu Shiju and Old Man Liu had taken their third step, he slowly raised his foot to take his first. Very cool. Yeah, they really are hard to catch. Reluctantly, Jiang Xining and Lu Niangqi followed him. Simply observing what lay ahead had been daunting enough. Actually, standing on the stone platforms brought a whole new level of fear. Jiang Xining couldn't resist looking down and was immediately struck by terror. The stone platform was tall and narrow, making it all too easy to plunge into the dark, unfathomable waters lurking below. The surface of the water lay about 10 yards beneath their feet, so that's 30 feet down. Just one fleeting glance made Jiang Xining's head spin, and a buzzing dizziness overtook him. I'm not blaming him, like, being 30 feet up on a thin pole and you're walking across, like, I'd probably get vertigo. Like, I'm also so clumsy and my knees like to buckle randomly, so I'd be screwed walking over this path. Like, I would not make it across this path. Like, I'd either be stuck or I'd be going in the water. Like, power to them for doing that. Whew. The stone platforms they stood on had to be carefully chosen. Which ones were safe and which ones were to be avoided was determined entirely by Lu Shiju as he guided them along. Yeah, no. I feel like this is just like a whole bad time, especially with the dark water underneath. Like, that's awful. That's horrible. Random things floating in it. That's worse. Like, oh, oh. Doubt lingered in Jiang Xining's mind. Liu Shiju and Old Man Liu were nearly 20 yards ahead of Xuan Min. Could Xuan Min really see which stones they were stepping on? Yeah. Oh, I'm a goner right after that first step. Me too, Ruby. Me too. Also, welcome. Why do I feel like the water is rising? Jiang Xining's voice was feeble like a man on death's door. Water? In front of him, Lu Niangqi froze, his body turning rigid at his words. There's water beneath us? Don't look down! Lu Shiju's voice rang out from ahead, urgency latching his words. Oh no. Only then did Jiang Xining recall Lu Shiju's warnings from earlier, but it was too late. He watched helplessly as Lu Niangqi suddenly hunkered down and clutched at the stone platform, unwilling to take another step. I can't go on. I want to turn back. I want to go home. He shuffled around, ready to retreat. The stone platform behind him was occupied by Jiang Xining. In his moment of panic, Lu Niangqi leaped to the platform next to where Jiang Xining stood. Don't! Jiang Xining cried. Good morning. He moved to yank Lu Niangqi back, but he was too slow and almost sent himself tumbling off the edge. Crushed rubble rolled by his feet and tumbled into the inky waters below. Plop! Tiny splashes blossomed like flowers in the water. Nestled in Xuanmin's pouch, Shushian felt something within himself pulse, as if a heart had sprouted inside his chest, even though he was a wispy spirit lacking any form and possessed no organs whatsoever. He mumbled something in his haze, then descended into a mental state even more chaotic than before. The sound of rocks hitting the water startled Lu Niangqi. Something came over him while he shuddered, his voice tinged with panic. Before he could finish, the once calm and boundless black waters beneath him roared to life as if a long-dead creature had emerged. Hey, black water! Had emerged from the depths. Waves surged upward, crashing mercilessly over everyone. They were instantly drenched with a great splash. At that moment, a sound. Thump. Another heartbeat. It was as if Shushian had developed arteries and veins. He felt blood surge through his body and a fiery warmth crawl up his spine. Soon, even the sensation was overwhelmed by a flood of limitless heat. Hurry! Lu Shiju's voice pierced through the cacophony of roaring waves. Jiang Xining was clinging to the edge of his platform, but before he could respond, he was struck in the back of his neck, transforming him into a piece of soaked paper. He watched helplessly as Xuanmin seized him and then grabbed the panicking Lu Niangqi so he could carry them forward with long strides. Power to Xuanmin. The water surged ever higher, and the dark waves showed no sign of abating. Xuanmin wove between the towering swells, never stopping for a moment, his steps brisk and steady. It's not enough, Liu Shiju shouted from up ahead. We need to move faster. The water is rising too quickly, much faster than last time. I don't know if we can reach the end. Hurry! Before he could finish speaking, another massive wave crashed down. Lu Niangqi swallowed several mouthfuls of water, his body completely drenched. The stench of damp decay clung to his nose. Ew. The waves persisted, crashing relentlessly. In no time at all, the waterline crept up to his feet, then to his calves. Just as he was wiping the water from his face, another wave swept over him. It was as though he would never be dry again, trapped in an inescapable deluge, and fated to drown within it. The sensation was hauntingly familiar, bringing with it a rush of disorientation, sending him back 7 or 8 years to that moment in the river. Xuanmin glowered at the youth struggling in his hands. The rolling waves seemed to have triggered some traumatic memories in Lu Niangqi. He was screaming like a man gone mad and dragging them down. Xuanmin raised his hand, poised to strike the back of Lu Niangqi's neck. Savage. Bang! The dazed Shushian jerked awake again. He felt a mysterious sensation spreading through his soul, as if he had drawn up something familiar from the depths, then absorbed it. It flowed through his non-existent blood vessels, swelling and growing hot. Anyone else think the author saw Indiana Jones at some formative point? Quite possibly, and yes, I was also thinking of Blackwater, Esper Lady. What the hell? Shushian grumbled to himself. What is this? Rising dough? It was like he was about to burst out of the marble. Bang! Bang! The sounds echoed in succession, and this time it wasn't just Shushian who had noticed. The group rushing toward the opposite bank also heard it. What's happening? Even Lu Shiju, who had taken this path before, seemed astonished. Something is striking the stone platform. Xuanmin paused briefly before quickening his pace even more. Hurry. Lu Shiju was correct. Something had awakened in the depths of the inky water and was slamming against the base of the stone platform. With each impact, the platform shuddered and grew increasingly unstable. The tremors were so violent the group could barely keep their footing. Wham! An even louder crash echoed, and the stone platforms groaned in unison, followed by the sound of cracking stone. This is like my nightmare. Like, this is horrifying. It's Peter Jr. Yeah. Peter Jr.'s cranky right now. Oh, man. And even, not just the platform beneath them either. For some reason, every single platform in front of them and behind them crumbled at that very moment. They didn't even have the time to struggle before falling into the water. He just wants to say hi to his dad. Ugh. As the water flowed over his head, Xuan Min just barely heard something from the pouch at his waist. A sizzling noise, like a spoonful of water splashed onto hot iron. The murky lake was filled with no ordinary water. It stung his eyes, making opening them unbearable. He tried anyway, and after he blinked a couple of times, his vision recovered just in time for him to see a smooth object rolling from the pouch at his waist. Upon hitting the water, it plummeted straight down as if it weighed 1,000 pounds. Losing his hands and feet hadn't made this evil spirit any less of a pain. Xuan Min reached out to grab the marble at once. However, just as his palm wrapped around it, an enormous weight bore down upon Schwanman's hand, like he wasn't holding a marble but Mount Tai itself. Before he could react, the marble sent him plunging toward the depths. The water was astonishingly deep and cold. In seconds, the chill pierced his skin and filled his bones. The freezing water also jolted Shushian's mind, clearing it, though he had yet to figure out what was going on. In his confusion, he had the audacity to ask Xuan Min, "Bald donkey, why am I in the water?" We're at 30 bald donkeys. Hell if I know, thought Xuan Min. And why are you here as well? Xuan Min didn't say a word. Even hell wouldn't know the answer to that question. Ignorant inside the golden marble, Shu Xian had nothing to fear and was free to speak as he pleased. But the moment Xuan Min opened his mouth, he'd swallow water. Choking was the least of his worries. His main issue was that he had no idea where this water came from or how long it had been sitting here. He didn't need a brain to know that it wouldn't be too clean. He'd rather drown than drink it. There goes his cleanliness factor again. Yeah, maybe I'll just pass out. I won't even struggle. Yeah, you and me, Ruby, you and me. The marble plunged down at full speed, dragging them along until it crashed into the bottom of the pool. Despite the thick layer of mud to cushion the impact, Xuanmin's fingers still spasmed and curled from the pain. Anyone else would probably have found their fingers shattered. In his daze, Shushian could sense that something was insulating him, and he tried to speak. But the burning heat of his expanding body consumed his senses, and the constant tremors left him dizzy and nauseous. He flailed aimlessly in the mud, driven by some instinct, urgently searching for something. However, his thrashing only disturbed the dirt, turning the entire depth murky. Never mind finding anything. It was a miracle if he didn't end up lost himself. Yeah, oh, that's fair. The water seems gross, and it must be his nightmare. Yeah. I'm sick of all this mud, Shushian spat in his daze. His naturally irritable disposition had worsened, turning his tone thick with hostility. Where is it? Where is it? He didn't even know what he was searching for, yet that phrase looped endlessly within his mind. Bang! With every thunderous impact, Shushian grew even more frustrated. The muck churned into a frenzy, and the water grew increasingly turrid. Ew. Xuan Min lost track of the golden marble after pulling his hand back. The sheer depths of this pool, combined with their endless descent, no ordinary person could endure it, and even Xuan Min was no exception. Lu Niangqi was the first to succumb to the water. He'd escaped Xuan Min's strike, but not the suffocating sensation of drowning. After thrashing around madly in Xuan Min's grasp and swallowing several mouthfuls of water, he gradually fell silent. Next was Jiang Xining, who'd reverted to paper form. As he was a ghost, he didn't need to breathe, but the relentless tremors and the stirring of the water were threatening to turn his body into pulp. Finally, there was Xuan Min, who was frowning. And I say frowning, not drowning. Just as the world began to fade with his consciousness, an ear-splitting noise pierced through the muddy depths, not far away from him. The sound sliced like a blade in the dark, turrid waters, and echoed throughout the tomb. For a brief moment, the dazed Xuan Min was dragged back to clarity. The distinct roar was familiar. A distant roar was familiar. He was certain he'd heard it somewhere before. However, just as that thought flashed through his mind, the murky waters began to swirl with a terrible speed. Like a hole had been drilled into the bottom of the pool, a massive maelstrom formed, and the water surged with tremendous force toward that point. The vortex swept away everything floating within the inky depths, including Xuan Min. The force of its suction was akin to being shackled with 1,000 tons of weight. No one could resist it. So, being soaked to pulp was the good ending. The bad ending was getting torn to pieces, Jiang Xining thought in despair as he was dragged into the swirling current. Those in human bodies, like Lu Niangqi and Xuan Min, also experienced the strain. Each of their joints was nearly pushed to its limit. If the whirlpool intensified further, their bones would crack and dislocate. Ow. An uncanny clear roar accompanied the massive waves of the whirlpool. The sheer might and fury behind it would strike awe into anyone's heart. Jiang Xining thought it almost felt as if they were not in a sealed pitch-black tomb, but rather out in the vast and boundless seas, witnessing a water spout. Jiang Xining couldn't actually see anything, as his world churned around him and the vortex scale was confined to the pool. Yet that word flashed through his mind regardless. A waterspout, the legendary phenomena caused by dragons drawing in the waters of the sea. He'd never seen one in reality, only glimpsed it a few times in the pages of his books, but he couldn't help but think of it. Ruby, I'll get back to you at the end of this chapter about where I read my stuff. But just a moment. Before those nonsensical thoughts could go anywhere, he was sucked into the depths of the whirlpool. Crack! One crisp sound later, Jiang Xining's vision went dark, and he lost consciousness. The echo of thundering waves lingered for a long time, resonating throughout the vast tomb and droning on and on. Finally, after a long while, they receded, and the tomb fell back into a deadly silence. On the stone ceiling, the 7 luminous pearls of the Big Dipper still emanated their feeble glow, faintly radiating over the area above the former pool. The once unfathomable black water had been completely drained, leaving nothing in their wake. In mere moments, the depth had been sucked dry, and the narrow stone platforms that connected both sides had shattered into haphazard piles of rubble strewn at the bottom of the hollow. The layer of mud at the bottom was now heaped in the corners as if someone had impatiently swept it aside. With the soft mud removed, the stone tiles lining the bottom were revealed. One section of the tiles had been shattered, exposing black soil. Nestled within the soil was a shimmering golden marble, quivering gently. Strewn around the marble were several unconscious people, their complexions ashen. Xuan Min and the others. A moment later, the golden marble gurgled and spat out a mouthful of water, breaking the deadly silence within the tomb. An eerie sigh swiftly followed right after. Shushian curled up inside the marble and released a long breath. He felt like he was about to explode. While he'd been thrashing around at the pool's bottom, his consciousness had been one big muddle. He had only vaguely sensed that he'd shattered some stone tiles and smashed something within the black soil, then pulled it into the marble. In that moment, he experienced an immense sense of satisfaction, as if he had finally taken a bite of something he'd long yearned for. That burning desire, too, was temporarily suppressed. However, there was one unfortunate thing. While the golden marble had been absorbing the object in the soil, he'd really overdone it and sucked up all the water in the pool as well. Now he was bloated to the point of discomfort. This was a real nuisance. The water hadn't entered his stomach. It had been absorbed by the marble. So shouldn't the marble have shattered? Why was he full to the point of bursting instead? It made no sense. As he rolled back and forth in frustration, Xuan Min, lying unconscious at the bottom of the pool, twitched his fingers, then suddenly opened his eyes. For some reason, his eyes looked cautious and oddly uncertain when he opened them, as if he had forgotten where he was, who was with him, and what he was doing. He stared at the Big Dipper in the ceiling above him, then abruptly sat up. Shushian heard his movements and struggled to roll out of the black soil, clattering along the bottom of the pool before coming to a stop next to Xuan Min. "Excuse me, bald donkey. Have you any talismans to help with digestion? I'll accept elixirs, too." 31. He looked up at Xuan Min, waiting for his reply. However, Xuan Min only stared at him for a moment. "Where did this evil spirit come from? Why are you hiding inside a marble?" "What kind of nonsense is this?" Shushian wondered. He stopped rolling and turned stiff as a stone egg as he stared at Xuan Min in disbelief. "Are you joking?" As at the shock from Xuan Min's words, the bloated feeling vanished, like Shushian had successfully digested all the water in an instant. He paused in surprise, then circled around Xuan Min twice, scrutinizing him. Had he drowned and ended up possessed by a ghost? After a beat, he stopped to study Xuan Min's profile, his gaze fixed on the man's neck. The light in the tomb was dim, and while that might have hindered an ordinary person, Shushian could see many details clearly. "What's that thing on your neck?" he asked. At some unknown time, it seemed like Xuan Min had developed a strange mark on the side of his neck that resembled a bird's eye view of a spider. Shushian recalled that Xuan Min did have a small mole on his neck, but it had looked nothing like this. Xuan Min frowned at the question and touched the side of his neck. When his fingers brushed over that spot, the spider seemed to dissolve beneath the warmth of his fingers, retracting its legs and transforming back into a simple mole. Shushian realized that the so-called spider was the result of thin blood vessels extending from the mole, which resembled the delicate legs of an arachnid. As the blood vessels vanished, Xuan Min frowned and closed his eyes, pinching the space between his brows like he was dizzy. He remained in that position, motionless. Shushian was reminded of the events at Gu Yun Hall. At that time, Xuan Min had also suffered from a spate of dizziness when he went to meditate in his chair. For a long time, he sat there without moving. Shushian rolled around Xuan Min a couple more times, but found nothing unusual beyond that small mole. Just what kind of illness is this? Shushian had never seen anything like it before. After a long while, Xuanmin stirred again. He shifted his fingers to his temple and rubbed them before scowling as he forced his eyes open. Shushian was staring up at Xuanmin, observing his every move, so when Xuanmin opened his eyes, he caught Shushian's gaze. The amount of trouble you can cause without arms and legs, Xuanmin said. Expressionless, you truly deserve to be exorcised, evil spirit. Yeah. This bald donkey should just return to being confused. 32. I feel like bald donkey's going to become our new Shameless. Xuanmin began to stretch the hand that had been hanging at his side. He cracked each knuckle one by one, glancing at Shushian dispassionately before moving to the next. Only then did Shushian understand what the fleshy cushion he'd landed on earlier was. So many donkeys, yes. He forced himself to ignore Xuanmin's earlier words. Rolling over, the dragon was ready to ask about the spider mole when he caught sight of a nearby shadow. It was a figure lying sideways, a human-shaped stone statue. Its head round like a melon, though the face was crude and ferocious. That in itself was nothing unusual. Stone statues were common sights in tombs. However, the statue had split open upon crashing to the ground, revealing its contents. And if Shushian's eyes were working, inside the statue was a person who'd been dead for a very long time. I would not be surprised if we hit 50 donkeys by the end of the book. Xuanmin had noticed it as well. He turned his head and scanned the area, only to see that there were hundreds of similar stone statues, all lying at the bottom of the hollow. That's horrifying. Abruptly, Shushian realized how long these bodies had been soaking in the water and that all of that liquid was within his marble now. A tremor ran through him. Yep, that'd be gross. That'd be so gross. He just absorbed corpse water. Ew. Xuanmin rubbed his hands and rose, intending to take a closer look at the stone statues when he heard the sound of splashing at his feet. Confused, he looked down and saw the motionless marble gushing water as if it were throwing up. The round object wordlessly spewed out a puddle of clear water, which slowly pooled around Xuanmin's feet. He stared at the marble. When he spoke, his tone betrayed a complicated emotion within. Are you going to throw up all the water? Shushian ignored him and continued to spout like a listless spring. Xuanmin curled his lips, though his voice was now indifferent. Will you then bathe in all the water you spat up? Shushian said nothing, but the marble stopped what it was doing. You really know how to discuss someone, he muttered after a second. Him calling Xuanmin bald donkey every now and then is a testament to how clingy Shushian is to Xuanmin. I feel kind of bad for him at this point, yeah. You're too kind, I'm flattered. Xuanmin turned his gaze away and stepped toward a few nearby statues. After some hesitation, Shushian rolled after him, hot on his heels. Pick me up already. I'm so bloated, my head is spinning. Xuanmin glanced at the marble that was glistening with water. After the corpse water on you dries. Shushian froze before yelling. If you keep saying such disgusting things, I'll throw up right on you. Don't test me. All right, I won't. Xuanmin paused in exasperation, but he still picked the marble up. Then he tossed him right into the pouch, refusing to touch him for a second longer. How dare you act disgusted by me, came Shushian's muffled voice from inside the pouch. You were soaking in the water, too. You're drenched. Xuanmin stopped for a moment, then slid in the water too. You're drenched. Xuanmin stopped for a moment, then sliced open his fingertip without a word. He squeezed several droplets of blood from the wound and used them to draw a simple rune on his palm. Instantly, all the water on him evaporated. His thin hemp robe dried and once again became light as a feather, and even the water on Shushan vanished without a trace. His goal achieved, Shushan was quite satisfied. What brought him even greater satisfaction was that the curious nature of Xuanmin's hip seemed effective for digestion as well. Shushan could feel the object he'd absorbed from the soil slowly merging with the marble and becoming one. During his earlier days, he hadn't even seen what object he was absorbing. I bet it's one of his bones. Now he could feel it as it melded into him. The buried thing must have been a part of his body. There we go. Perhaps it was a piece of his spine, his blood, or a slice of tendon. It wasn't much, and it wasn't complete. Nevertheless, as it slowly joined with the marble, a powerful satisfaction surged through him, and some feeling and warmth returned to the area that should have been his spine, which had been hollow for over half a year. When it came to nurturing spirit, chi, bones, or flesh, there had to be a starting point, akin to how a seed is needed to plant flowers or trees. Shushan had spent the better part of the past 6 months refining his chi into cohesive form. After much effort, he'd finally succeeded in establishing a connection within his spine, enabling his upper body to move as it once had. But the chi was so different from bone, lacking shape and substance, and he hadn't managed more. This time, however, he could feel the seed taking root within him. Outside of the marble, Xuanmin was inspecting the stone statues. There were too many strewn across the stone tiles for him to inspect each one, so he focused only on those that were damaged. They did not all look the same. After examining around 10, he identified 3 distinct types. Those with glaring eyes of fury, those spouting drooping brows as if weeping, and those wearing wide grins of joy. These 3 types of statues also contained different types of corpses. The ones with the angry statues had no heads, the one in the sad statues had no legs, and the one in the happy statues had no hands. Great. Did you figure something out? Shushan asked. What purpose did these statues serve? They look rather sinister. I understand a little, Xuanmin said with a frown. Shushan was puzzled. You seem to know about everything. How and why? Perhaps I read it in a book once. There were over 100 stone statues. They clearly weren't ordinary funerary gifts designed to accompany the dead. Given their careful design, there had to be a purpose to them. Xuanmin recalled a concept like this, although he was unsure of its source. Still, he knew there was a feng shui array capable of reversing one's fate called Flow of 100 Soldiers. If executed properly, it could protect someone from all manners of calamities and guarantee 100 years of prosperity. Yeah, it's crazy inhumane. It was an exceedingly powerful array, but it had one flaw. It was impossibly vile. Few people could bring themselves to execute it because this array required the sacrifice of 300 lives. 100 fierce generals, 100 suffering common folk, and 100 wicked villains. The different faces of the stone statues here corresponded neatly with those 3 groups. The furious statues were the generals, the sorrowful statues were the common folk, and the laughing statues were the villains. 300 lives. Shushan was taken aback by the sheer scale of the array. That's insane. When humans wish to do evil, they're no less terrifying than I. Where did they manage to find 300 people? That's no small number. The loss of half that would raise a commotion. For 100 people missing, even a blind person would see that something was wrong. Just as he was speaking, a clinking sound came from one of the stone statues. Xuanmin was examining, and something fell out. It sounded like a piece of copper or iron. Since the corpse had been carrying it, it was covered in decay and filth. Xuanmin frowned, then pulled off a small section of his robe's helm. Guess we found out what happened to the bandits. I guess we did. Shushian scoffed at the tearing noise. Keep ripping your robe like that, and soon it'll be a shirt. Of course, he was exaggerating. Xuanmen's robes didn't brush the ground, but they were very long, enough to cover most of his feet. When he walked, they glided over the earth, close but never touching, and each piece he tore off was no bigger than his palm. Even if he did it 17 or 18 times more, his robe wouldn't be that much shorter. But Shushian could never control his tongue, and it was easy to take jabs at Xuanmin from time to time. Picking up the fallen object with the white hemp scrap, Xuanmin held it up to the light and inspected it closely. It was a small iron tag. One side was engraved with a beast's head, while the other carried a name. However, the latter had been scratched out with a knife, rendering it illegible. At Xuanmin's lack of response to his insult, Shushian poked out of the pouch. Huh, that looks familiar. You've seen it? Xuanmin considered pushing the marble back inside, but hearing his words, he held the iron piece out instead. I remember now, said Shushian. On the way to Wulong County, we came across many rundown temples in the mountains. We found one of these while we were resting inside. It was even stained in blood. From a battle, I assumed. Later, just before entering Wulong City, the bookworm and I found another one of those at the foot of the city gates. The tags had been cast from a single mold, so they'd been crafted together and most likely originated from the military. Soldiers danced on the edge of life and death, and anyone who'd been in battle would have spilled blood, fulfilling the requirement for fierce generals. However, the military was strictly regulated. Could 100 soldiers disappear without being reported? About a half-year wandering among the common folk, Shushian knew little about the military, but Xuanmin was aware of some things. Everyone in the military carried one of these iron tags, he explained. First, they were useful for administrative purposes. Second, they served to verify the owner's identities. Third, if their owner perished in battle and their body couldn't be recovered, the tags would substitute for the corpse and be interned in its place. If the soldier didn't perish on the battlefield but grew too old or suffered a serious injury, rendering them unable to fight, they'd be discharged from service. The army wouldn't reclaim their tags, but they'd scratch out the names written upon them. Where did you hear all this? Shushian asked. Xuanmin stiffened before shaking his head. I forgot. I might have overheard someone discussing it in the corner of an alley. Shushian found Xuanmin to be quite the oddball. Judging from his spider-shaped mole, he was suffering from some kind of sickness. The way he woke up, unable to recognize others, implied his condition must have been quite severe. Bald donkey, probably afflicted with dissociation, but constantly acting aloof and almighty, who always kept people at a distance, had somehow managed to gather this much information by mingling on the streets. That was rather hard to believe. We're at 33, by the way. You look like someone who just chats with strangers, Shushian asked. Before Xuanmin could answer, Shushian continued. No, you do not. Xuanmin's expression remained unchanged as he pressed down on Shushian's round head. Maybe it was his body. Whatever. In any case, he pushed the marble back into the pouch. Shushian refused to be silent as he dropped in. So the fierce generals were either old or wounded soldiers. What about suffering common folk and the wicked villains? Beggars and bandits. That answer hadn't come from Xuanmin, but another gentle and steady voice. Xuanmin turned to see that Lu Shiju and Old Man Liu had woken up and were walking toward them. Old Man Liu was wizened with age, while Lu Shiju looked even frailer than Jiang Xinei. Had they really come to so quickly? Being tossed by the whirlpool's current and slammed into the pool floor would have been enough to seriously wound anyone, but both of them showed no signs of new injuries. In fact, they looked exactly the same as when Xuanmin had first encountered them behind the stone door. Even the bruises on their bodies and the dampness of their clothing was unchanged. Xuanmin scanned them up and down. He didn't say much, only turned to the remaining 100 or so stone statues and asked, "How do you know?" Lu Shiju raised the bundle of twigs he was holding and shifted his fingers. "I saw it and divined it. I touched a couple of them earlier. These soldiers were intercepted on their way home. They're easy to kidnap. Just say they died in battle and their bodies couldn't be found. That would be enough to erase any suspicion." Regarding beggars and vagrants, no one paid any attention to whether they came or went. Sourcing bandits was even simpler, as the populace was happy to be rid of them. Wherever they were sent, whether to prison or to be put to death, no one would ask any questions. With all three factions in hand, the array had been constructed. Lu Shiju's blind eyes were much more potent than the average person's. He looked around him, then pointed at two different locations. "Something's there." Xuanmin walked over and plucked a stone shard from each place where Lu Shiju had pointed. As he brushed his fingers over their surfaces, he could feel runes engraved upon them. Xuanmin held the shards and scrutinized them for a while. "They're familiar," Xuanmin eventually said. "What's familiar?" asked Shushan. "The runes. I've seen them elsewhere before." But the light in the tomb was too dim. No matter how hard Xuanmin looked, he could only roughly make out outlines. While he was examining the stone shards, Lu Shiju turned to glance at Lu Niangqi, who was unconscious nearby. To Xuanmin, Lu Shiju asked, "Niangqi is..." Sensing the hesitation in his tone, Xuanmin finished for him without looking up. "Very afraid of water." "He sure is. I was feeling too sluggish to sense anything earlier," came Shushian's lazy voice from the pouch, "but I did hear him screaming his head off." Lu Shiju dropped his gaze. "That was my fault." Alright, we will find out why in a second. Ruby, I promise to tell you which place I read, like, the rough translations. Give me a sec. I'm gonna give my throat just a second to chill, because that was one hell of a chapter. Let me pull up the site I read from. One second. So I use wuxia.click. So this is what I use, wuxia.click. It's not the greatest, but it has a lot of the novels. But yeah. So it's literally, here, I can type it in the chat. 1 second. Nope, that's the wrong button. Yeah. There you go. It has some of the stuff that's been published too. I mean, they're rough translations, but yeah. Yeah, no worries. I know for sure the very, very rough translation of Husky is up there. That I actually read it before it was fully published. Got very confusing at the end. But it's there. The beginning's much more coherent. Same thing for Scumvillain. I'm pretty sure. Oh, site is banned. I'm sorry, Ruby. That's what I use. If I'm just like hankering for a weird one and just out and about, and don't have anything on me, I'll pop on there or AO3. Yeah. Night, Annika. Thanks for sticking around. Yeah, we've got one more chapter. It's thankfully a short one. Hey, all good, Ruby. It gets intense. So you can also find Downmate on novel updates. Thank you, Cookielicious. Okay. Yep. See you Thursday, Annika. Okay. Let me write down the time. Uh-oh. Where'd the other one go? Did I drop it? Oh, there it is. All right. Yeah. Tusky hurts. It's not just Danmei, it's all translated novels. So you can find Het, Yuri, Yaoi. They do mark tags, but sometimes they don't mark them well, so just a heads up about that. But yeah. That's what I have found and used. It's been okay. But yeah. Okay. Timing 13 2:07:30. One last sip and then we go. Quite possibly truffle. All right, chapter 13, Life Exchange Array. Liu Yuan had been a widower. 13 years ago, he'd moved from the Liu family's old home to settle down east of the river. His wife had passed, so he was raising his two sons alone, supporting them with a small fishing boat. Despite a naturally fearsome face, he was an honest, straightforward man. He always smiled at others, which softened the ferocity of his features. His neighbors often said that Liu Yuan's sons didn't look at all like him. Liu Yuan was tall and stalwart, with muscular, powerful arms from his years of hauling in nets. His two sons were a different story. When he'd first arrived east of the river, his eldest son was 4 and his youngest son was 2. They were both thin and gangly. Still, while his younger son was skinny, you could see a hint of Liu Yuan within him. He was spirited and full of vigor. Liu Yuan was a big-hearted man, and Liu Niangqi was playful and unruly. He'd often get into trouble, so Liu Yuan had to discipline the mischievous boy frequently. It was the first son who was truly nothing like Liu Yuan. Whenever the three of them were together, the eldest son, nicknamed Liu Shiju, always stood out. He was far too pale, bordering on sickly. His personality was also very different from Lu Yuan's. Lu Shiju barely spoke, and he didn't act like a child at all. I honestly want to see a historical drama with a single dad. If I find one, I'll send it your way, Truffle. Most of the time, he came off as very mature, but he'd occasionally make strange movements. That, combined with his ashen skin and frail appearance, gave him an unsettling air, so people tended to avoid him. The neighbors would tease Lu Niangqi from time to time, but they rarely did the same to Lu Shiju. What the neighbors didn't know was that Lu Shiju was not Lu Yuan's biological son. Lu Yuan had very little family. His older kin had long passed. After his wife had died, he'd fallen into deep depression for a year, and his house had suffered for it. For that entire year, his son Lu Niangqi had very little to eat, and he turned gaunt and painfully skinny. So Lu Yuan decided to lock up their old house and take his son to Wulong County. The riverside was good for fishing, which would provide them with enough to live. Before entering the city, he and his son had rested at an old temple within the mountains. He'd encountered Lu Shiju huddled there. A child of around 3 or 4 hiding alone in an old temple wasn't a normal sight. Lu Yuan asked Lu Shiju a few simple questions, which was enough for him to guess what had happened. Lu Shiju had once lived over 100 miles away in Gua country. But with the drought that year and too many mouths to feed, his parents had found themselves unable to support all their children, and they were forced to abandon a few. They'd probably wanted to sell them, but Lu Shiju was sickly and weak, and his vision had been impaired from birth. No one wanted him. Unable to find a buyer, they could only abandon him. If they dropped him too close to home, he might find his way back, so they took him 100 miles away instead. Travelers would rest at temples from time to time. If he were lucky, a kind person might find and adopt him. It was a foolishly optimistic thought. After all, there were far more robbers and wolves in the mountains than kind-hearted souls. The likelihood of being captured or devoured was far greater than the chance of being adopted. But Lu Shiju had been lucky. He encountered Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan thought that raising 2 sons wouldn't be that different from raising one, and now Lu Niangqi would have a playmate. So he decided to bring Lu Shiju home. However, he soon realized that Lu Shiju wasn't a good playmate. The boy preferred to sit quietly instead of running around. Still, he was a sensible child. He would feel his way around despite his poor vision, help Lu Yuan sort through fish and shrimp, or bring a stool to the stove so he could prepare soup. While Lu Yuan was strict with Lu Niangqi, he never touched a hair on Lu Shiju's head. Instead, he doted on him dearly. Children loved playing with those slightly older than them, and Lu Niangqi was no exception. Despite Lu Shiju's reticence, Lu Niangqi would still follow him around. So reticence is like shyness, introvert. Like, I don't want to say standoffishness because that's a little too harsh of a word, but like hesitation. Despite his hesitation or coldness, Lu Niangqi would follow him around. Lu Niangqi saw it as helping, but Lu Shiju only saw it as a nuisance. For instance, one day Lu Shiju had boiled a tub of water to help his father wash their clothes and shoes, hoping to remove the reek of fish from them. Lu Niangqi scampered around the kitchen, excited to help, only to slip and land in the boiling water bottom first. He shrieked like a struck pig. On another occasion, the tree in the yard had become infested with insect shells, hampering its ability to produce fruit. Lu Shiju took a wooden broom to sweep the shells away, and Lu Niangqi scampered over to help again, only to grow amused by the shells during their cleaning. He picked one up and blew on it like a whistle, and the clear, bright sound delighted him. Alas, by nightfall his lips had swollen into sausages, causing him to wail again. At first, just the sight of Lu Niangqi gave Lu Shiju a headache, but as his eyesight deteriorated, could no longer see Lu Niangqi anyway, so he grew used to his little brother. That's that's a little harsh, but good for you for accepting him, I guess. Once Lu Shiju's vision faded nearly to nothing, he began to notice strange things and hear odd sounds. Sometimes he couldn't resist following the sounds outside, searching for their source. When he found nothing, he quietly returned to his tasks. The year things changed, he was 9, and Lu Niangqi was 7. One day at noon, Lu Shiju heard another strange noise and, unable to help himself, slipped out of the kitchen, feeling his way to the riverbank. Lu Niangqi had matured a little by then due to his older brother's blindness. Occasionally, it occurred to him to look after Lu Shiju. Lu Nianqi reminds me of a kid I went to summer camp with, always ending up getting injured or in the poison ivy. Poor kid. The moment Lu Niangqi saw Lu Shiju leave, he hurried after him, pestering him to come home the entire way. However, it was like Lu Shiju had been bewitched. He didn't seem to hear his younger brother at all. That same afternoon, Lu Shiju glimpsed a dragon's shadow within the river's misty depths. After yelling in astonishment, he'd slipped and fell right into the water. Lu Niangqi instinctively leapt in after him, wanting to pull his blind brother ashore. But as had so often happened, Lu Niangqi soon discovered that his helping only caused more trouble, and he almost paid for it with his own life. The stretch of river they'd fallen into was secluded, with no fishing boats around. If it hadn't been for a couple selling vegetables passing by, they might have drowned without anyone the wiser. The old man didn't know how to swim, but he recognized Lu Niangqi. By the time Dad arrived, Lu Niangqi had stopped struggling, Lu Shiju recounted slowly. The waters were turbulent. He couldn't rescue both of us together. So Dad first held me up so I could breathe, and then he pulled Lu Niangqi ashore. When he returned for me, the wind picked up, bringing waves with it. I felt a vortex forming beneath my feet. It latched onto his ankle, and he began thrashing and choking on water. He sucked in a breath, frowned, then exhaled softly. I was shoved ashore while the vortex dragged him underneath. He never resurfaced. Dad was gone, and Yang Chi became terrified of water. He also stopped following me around. As he spoke, he didn't cry or show any strong emotions. His tone was placid, as if he were recounting a stranger's story, and his eyes didn't so much as moisten. For some reason, the listeners grew uncomfortable in his stead, as if they were feeling sorrow in his place. Xuanmin put away the 2 rune-covered shards and spoke up. I noticed a break in Lu Niangxi's palm line corresponding to the age of 6, but someone elongated it by force. Lu Shiju's eyes were on Lu Niangqi. He didn't look up or speak. After a long pause, Lu Shiju said softly, At that time, I didn't really understand. I thought that things would be fine as long as I found a way to connect the lines. Even if it stunted his growth, he'd be alive at least. It'd be enough for him to keep living, no matter what kind of life it would be. But when When Lu Shiju had lengthened Lu Niangqi's life, Lu Yuan had met with disaster, an equivalent exchange. Having finished his account, Lu Shiju finally met Xuanmin's gaze. The tomb doesn't end here. There's still another section ahead that will take you to the exit. It's not dangerous. Could you do me a favor and take Niangqi there? Xuanmin looked at him askance. One final favor? Lu Shiju tensed. He muttered. He murmured before sighing. Otherwise, I'll have taken this trip in vain. Xuanmin was about to respond when Shushian interjected from the pouch. This hollow is at least 30 feet deep. How are we supposed to climb up and keep going? Without waiting for an answer, he continued. Should I spit the water back out so you can all float to the top? What a great idea! Saves us time and effort. Lu Shiju fell into a shocked silence at Shushian's interruption. It was Xuanmin who had to respond. No need to trouble yourself. You were the one who swallowed it all. Take responsibility and live with it. Ay. Shushian sputtered with fury, but failed to respond. That's funny. As they spoke, the always quiet old man Liu gently patted Lu Shiju and pointed at something. The others followed his gesture and saw a shadow on the wall of the former pool, about as large as a man. And yes, it is definitely like Full Metal Alchemist. They headed toward it for a better look, eventually realizing that it was a metal door. After being submerged for so long, its lock and hinge had rusted shut. Unfortunately, Xuanmin's talisman had proven useless in this chamber, so they had to use more primitive methods. After a great deal of time and effort, they finally managed to smash open the rusted lock with a piece of rubble. Lu Niangqi, who'd been unconscious on the ground the entire time, was jolted awake by the screech of the iron door creaking open. You're up? Lu Shiju looked at him. Can you stand? If so, don't keep lying there. If you want to leave, you'll need to do it on your own 2 feet. No one's going to carry you. Lu Shiju had returned to cold indifference the moment Lu Niangqi woke up, showing no desire to mend their brotherly relationship. I know. Lu Niangqi had swallowed several mouthfuls of the foul-tasting water. It aggravated his throat, leaving it a little hoarse. In the past, Lu Shiju's lack of caring would have pulled an angry retort from him, but he threw no jabs this time. Instead, he stumbled to his feet and coughed while hitting his chest, expelling the last dregs of liquid from his throat. Jiang Xining's paper body hung not far from where they stood, drying. It had been a while, and he was no longer so damp. At least, not enough to fall apart with a single touch. Xuanmin picked him up, tossed him into the pouch with the bloated marble, and joined everyone in leaving through the iron door. Behind the door was a staircase sloping upward. The tomb's craftsmen had probably designed it as an exit they could use after laying down the tiles at the bottom of the pool. The end of the staircase led into another passage, which was an exact match for the hall that they had entered from. It was as Lu Shiju had said. There were no further dangers. The lengthy staircase didn't even have any disturbing murals. It was surprisingly safe. When they'd almost reached the top, Xuanmin's paper blazed to life once more. Right as it flared, the tongue of flame began to emanate an odd smell, which spread around them in faint wisps. Inside the pouch, Jiang Xining cried, Wait! Don't move! Something's not right with the smell! What smell? Wu Niangqing seemed to recall something after speaking and covered his mouth, afraid that something strange might enter through it. He held his breath. However, thanks to Jiang Xining's warning, Shushian's sharp senses, sharper than Xuanmin's, let alone anyone else's, caught a faint whiff of sticks and leaves. It was the smell of crushed leaves and wood. Not especially pleasant, but not particularly disagreeable either. Still, it was strange to encounter the scent within a dark, sunless tomb. Jiang Xining came from a family of doctors and had grown up among many herbs and poisons. Though he would have said he was inferior to his parents if asked, he still had a fair amount of knowledge. He was also sensitive to the smells of various plants and capable of discerning between them. The fact that he had cried out meant that there was really something odd going on. Emboldened by Shushian, Jiang Xining crawled out of the pouch to look at Lu Niang Qi. You don't need to cover your nose and mouth. He waved his paper hand reassuringly. You probably won't be familiar with the smell. To be honest, it's not one I know well either, but I saw two people lose their lives to it, so it left a deep impression on me. I don't know if you've ever heard of this poison. Its folk name is 7 climb, 8 descend, 9 pass. The name comes from how anyone poisoned by it can only climb 7 steps up a hill or 8 steps down one. In any case, they'll die by the time they've taken 9 steps. Isn't that called an TR? Xuanmin asked. I've heard of it. Oh, said Jiang Xining. That's right, you're from the south. The upas tree that produces it thrives in the south, but can't survive long here. Generally, if you wanted to use it in your medicine, you'd have to wait for summer and autumn to buy from some southern herb dealers. Somehow, Jiang Xining always circled back to the topic of medicine and herbs no matter what he was talking about. Can you get to the point before New Year's? Shushian said coldly. Jiang Xining's words stuttered to a stop. When he continued, his voice was stiff. Don't touch anything around us. I suspect that the walls of this passage, the ground beneath our feet, and even the ceiling above our heads has been coated with the sap of that tree. We're all wounded. A couple of brushes, another couple of steps, and we'd be goners. The more he spoke, the quieter his voice became, his confidence waning, because Lu Shiju had turned to look at him with his sightless, pitch-black eyes as he was speaking. Then old man Liu slowly turned his head and fixed his murky eyes on him. Finally, even Xuanmin looked down at him. You. Jiang Xining mumbled a couple of words before clearing his throat and shrinking back into a corner of Xuanmin's pouch. Don't stare at me. I'll just lie down here at the bottom of this bag. You all be careful. Xuanmin swept his gaze past Lu Shiju and old man Liu before fixing upon Lu Niangqi. After going through the iron door, the order they'd been walking in had changed. In the beginning, it'd been Lu Shiju and old man Liu in front, with Xuanmin behind them, Jiang Xining and Lu Niangqi trailing him. Positioned in the center, Xuanmin had almost served as a barrier. Things were different now. While Lu Shiju and old man Liu were still in front, it was Lu Nianqi who was trailing directly behind them. No longer serving as the central barrier, Xuanmin brought up the rear, guarding their backs. Lu Niangqi lowered his hand, covering his mouth and nose. Halfway through Jiang Xining's explanation, he turned his back to Xuanmin and faced Lu Shiju, staring fixedly at his blind brother. Lu Shiju didn't return the look. After Jiang Xining's warning, he turned away and continued walking toward the other end of the staircase. The flickering flame between Xuanmin's fingers cast a dim yellow glow in front of him, just wide enough to reach Lu Shiju's feet. Before the youth stretched a vast expanse of darkness, while behind him glowed a warm golden light. With each step, he walked the delicate line between light and shadow. The collar of his garments was torn, and his disheveled hair partially scattered over his pale neck, casting a large shadow. Thanks to the dim lighting, it was difficult to notice anything amiss. Furthermore, Lu Niangqi was far shorter and thinner than most. Being several steps behind Lu Shiju, he was unable to see clearly the area around his collar. As Jiang Xining had warned, the entire passage was smeared with the poisonous sap of the upas tree. The closer they got to the exit, the more pronounced the smell became. "We're here," Lu Shiju said, standing at the top of the highest step, his back to the others. "This is the last section. It leads to the entranceway. I've never gotten to the end, but the exit should be beyond another stone door." "I've never gotten to the end." The statement sounded innocuous, but something seemed amiss on further thought. If he'd gotten this far and seen the stone door, then why hadn't he left? Old Man Liu also stood at the top of the stairs. From Xuanmen's vantage point, he could see the elderly man's half-turned profile. His old eyes focused blankly at a spot in the passage ahead, and he seemed both dazed and lost in thought. Lu Shiju didn't continue walking. Instead, he turned to look at his brother behind him. "What are you staring at me for? You can only see my chi, not my face." Lu Niangqi stopped in his tracks. For some reason, his voice was hoarse and trembling, laced with an undercurrent of sorrow and fear. "Stop looking and just go. What are you standing here for? We can talk outside. I don't want to hear your rambling now." "I can see your face," Lu Shiju said calmly, "even if it's not clear." He ignored the second half of Lu Niangqi's sentence and lowered his head, then pulled that bundle of twigs from his clothes. The red string binding it was a little faded. It was unclear how long it had been tied there, yet it bore no signs of wear, a testament to its quality. "This toy. You take it," Lu Shiju said, handing the bundle to Lu Niangqi. Lu Niangqi frowned and stepped aside a little, looking at his own feet instead of Lu Shiju. I don't want it. Hold it yourself," he snapped. "Why should I have to carry your stuff? Stop talking so much. You're blocking the way. Get going. What are you standing there for?" The corners of Lu Shiju's lips curved into a faint smile. "I'm not going." In the long years the two brothers had supported each other, this was one of the few times that Lu Shiju had ever smiled. Unfortunately, Lu Niangqi didn't see it. He kept his head down, frowning, refusing to look at Lu Shiju until he sighed heavily. "What do you mean you're not going? Don't talk crazy." By the time Lu Niangqi raised his gaze again, his eyes were watering. He shoved Lu Shiju hard. "Why don't you just go?" I think we all know why he doesn't just go. That is a gorgeous and very sad picture. The firelight in Xuanmen's hand perfectly lit Lu Shiju's face, revealing the subtle transformations taking place on his ash-pale skin. Faint marks began to emerge on his forehead, scattered right between his brows, resembling new moles poised to sprout. They mirrored the ones originally on Lu Niangqi's forehead. Yeah, the picture does hurt. "But I can touch you! Why aren't you moving?" Lu Niangqi struggled to suppress the lump in his throat. Repeated the sentence twice, as if trying to convince himself. "Look, I can grab your hand. There's no difference between you and ordinary people. Didn't they say you can't touch ghosts?" Stubbornly fixing his eyes on Lu Shiju, Lu Niangqi suddenly realized that his sight was blurred. He couldn't see his older brother clearly anymore. Sniffling, Lu Niangqi reached up to rub his eyes, and his hand came away wet. When he raised his head, he still couldn't see. "Stop rubbing your eyes," Lu Shiju sighed softly and shoved the bundle of sticks into Lu Niangqi's hands. Then he grabbed his younger brother and slowly dragged him up the steps. The more Lu Shiju told Lu Niangqi not to rub his eyes, the harder the latter did, until he pulled away and stood there with his hands over them, completely refusing to move. Off to the side, Old Man Liu hobbled a few steps forward and bent down by a wall. He returned to the steps a moment later and handed the things he was carrying to Lu Niangqi. "This is Uncle Liu's money pouch," Lu Shiju said. "The boat fare he collected some time back is here, along with the herb seeds he collected for Aunt Liu. It'll help with her headaches." When Lu Shiju finished speaking for Old Man Liu, he went quiet. There was a long silence. "I don't have anything else to give you," Lu Shiju said at last. He placed his hand on Lu Niangqi's head. "I'm going to find Dad now. Don't forget to burn some papers for us during Tomb Sweeping Day and the Ghost Festival. Burning them will guarantee your joy and longevity as well as plentiful descendants." With that, he gently patted his brother thrice, then withdrew his hand. Lu Niangqi felt coolness dispersing from the top of his head, and his heart instantly chilled. He wiped away his tears and looked up, only to find everything still blurry. As he tried to make out what he was seeing through the veil of fog, he realized that Lu Shiju and Old Man Liu had disappeared. He wiped at his eyes again before spotting a dark shadow 20 yards away. Xuanmin went over and shone the light, revealing two figures collapsed next to the wall of the passage. The smell of tree sap was even stronger here. The closer he drew, the more potent it was. He saw the bloodstains smeared on the wall and understood. Lu Shiju and Old Man Liu had wounds on their backs and necks that had allowed the toxic fluid to seep in when they leaned against the wall. As Lu Shiju had fallen, he had drawn a circle surrounded by complex runes in his own blood on the ground. It was a chilling sight, and most bizarre were the numerous copper coins scattered around the array. Despite their discordant appearance, they'd actually been placed in accordance with the stars and constellations overhead. Xuanmin guessed the sequence of events. The 4 strings of copper that Lu Niangqi had shouted about losing had been swiped by the deceased Lu Shiju himself using condensed spiritual energy. After all, the objects needed for a life exchange array were very specific. Despite standing there beside Xuanmin, Lu Niangqi was unable to see any of this. His mind and vision were possessed with the sight of Lu Shiju lying there. The ground was too cold, so he wanted to help Lu Shiju off of it. Inadvertently, when Lu Niangqi stepped forward, he walked into the circle. Xuanmin watched as the circle of dried brown blood turned vibrant again. The spot between Lu Niangqi's brow and the cut on his palm both shone with a bloody glow. But before anyone could blink, the light was gone. A wisp of mist escaped from the mouth of Lu Shiju's icy, long, rigid body. It circled around Lu Niangqi 3 times as if some kind of ritual had been completed at last, then bowed in Xuanmin's direction. With that, this final favor was complete. If not for the Lu family, both father and son, Lu Shiju probably would have died in that temple 13 years ago. Now, he'd swapped his life for a life. To him, it was well worth it. His wish had been fulfilled. It was just too bad that, from now on, he'd have to burden Lu Niangqi with placing another lantern on the river during the Ghost Festival. As he faded, he wondered if his younger brother would cry. And that is where we are going to end tonight. Yeah. I am looking ahead, and I think Thursday's going to be a very quick night. I honestly should have probably paired 13 with 14, now that I'm looking at it. But I guess we will just have a shorter time reading on Thursday. That'll be okay. But anyway, that is a very sad place to end it. But I will see you on Thursday. I'm going to repeat it again in case people didn't hear. So I will actually, after Thursday, when we finish book 1, I'll actually be taking a week off. I'm going to get the next book. I might get both the books up tonight. The preloading for the live streams set up. But yeah, I'm going to be taking next week off. It's 4th of July over here, so I have some family coming in. But yeah. See you Thursday. Thank you all for listening tonight. I hope you enjoyed. It was a rough one, but it was a good one. But yeah, for everyone watching later, I hope you also enjoyed. And I hope to see you next time. Good night, everybody. Thank you.